Welcome to part 6 of my 6-part series called How to Buy a House, because they don't teach you this in school. Today we are talking all things closing, which wraps up your home buying journey. Right before closing, you'll do your final walkthrough. This is typically 24 to 48 hours before you close. Sometimes right before. It can vary a lot depending on the circumstances. What you need to know about the final walkthrough is that you are checking to make sure the home is in the condition in which you last saw it. The things that you negotiated for at inspections are done, and there's nothing glaring that you couldn't see before because furniture has been moved around as the sellers are either fully moved out or close to it. Then you head to closing. So closing is where you pay your down payment and closing costs. That's called cash to close when you lump all that together. Sometimes you don't get your cash to close number until literally the morning of closing. That can be stressful because you have to get a cashier's check to close, and a lot of banks, have banker's hours, so they may not open early enough. So think about that when you're scheduling your closing time. Your cash to close, or really your closing costs more specifically, can vary a lot based on what day of the month you close. This is all determined at the beginning when you negotiate your contract, but I want to mention it because I think closing costs is kind of this abstract term and no one knows what it means. The biggest chunk of your closing costs is what's called your prepaids. So that is your homeowner's insurance. You usually pay a full year up front, and then you add 3 months into an escrow account. Taxes, you also establish an escrow account for. You establish 3 months of taxes in there as well, so that you have enough in there for your mortgage company to automatically pay your insurance and your taxes moving forward. And then you have prorated mortgage interest. So from the day you close until your first payment date, the bank wants their money for that window. So if you have a shorter window from your closing date to your first payment, that's less you have to pay them up front. If it's a longer amount of time between your closing date and your first payment, your closing costs and your prepaids will likely be higher. You don't necessarily always get the keys right away at closing. Possession is sometimes a different time than closing. And then funding is the other big word that can impact when you actually get possession of your home. There's a lot of ways to go with this, but long story short, I always recommend not moving into your home the day of closing, or at least not hiring out movers the day of closing if you can help it, because hiccups can happen with all 3 of those things to where you don't necessarily get possession at the time that you thought you would. So closing, though it's the end of your home buying journey, is just the beginning of your home ownership journey, of which there is another entire learning curve. But that's another series for another day. Stay tuned.